I know it's really close to your heart. When we talk about managers being multipliers or bottleneck, what do you think separates the two?
It's a really good question. I think the difference lies in the capability of the managers to empower their team. I think it falls down to the capability of the managers to delegate to their team. I think it falls down to their capability of being able to create a culture of accountability and hold people accountable. And a lot of that comes down to trust and clarity of expectation. And the problem is the brain hates ambiguity. And so when people aren't clear, they can't execute to a high level. And so managers, maybe they've got the best intentions by holding on to things because they think, well, if I'm not over it, maybe it'll go out with a poor result. But what they're actually doing is they're undermining their team and they're disempowering them and they're just creating this bottleneck, and that's just leading to them being exhausted. So there's always going to be a better flow if they're clear to their team members, this is what we need from an output perspective, and then they trust them to go away and execute it in a way that works for them. And then there's systems or processes in place that it can loop back if it needs to. And this is where that culture of accountability comes in. But when those things don't exist or when leaders don't delegate, they do become the bottleneck versus being able to multiply.
Yeah, thanks. And where do managers unintentionally drain energy from their team? And can you recommend to the audience some simple shift that makes a real difference?
Yeah, and I think the key in there, Roland, is it is unintentional a lot of the time. And I think part of it is we've got people in management roles that are technically capable, they're technically great at their jobs, and they're promoted into these management roles, but then they're not taught how to be great managers. They're not actually set up for success. And so the reality is they are better than their team at things. You know, you get the best salesperson, you make them sales manager, they're probably better at sales than their team, but that's no longer their job anymore. So they hold on to things, they try to control things, they don't delegate. Maybe they expect their team to do things in a way that works for them. And it's like everyone's brains work differently. And if you let someone just work in the way that works for them, they'll be able to get a great outcome. But when managers don't understand that different people work differently, they expect them to do it in a way that works for them. And so, yeah, they're unintentionally just draining them. I think the other thing that also comes into play is, and I think it comes back to that they treat everyone like themselves, and they don't consider that different people work differently. And so what that means is, you know, they're expecting people to be on all the time. They're expecting that they don't mind getting interrupted, they don't mind getting pulled into last minute meetings. Like, they don't stop and think different people have different deep focus times, different people work differently. And it's like, if you let people work in a way that works for them, you'll get great outcomes from them. But if you're constantly interrupting someone who wants to get into deep focus, you're not going to get quality out of that person, and you're just going to frustrate them and drain them. So it's like understanding that different people work in different ways and then being able to adapt to that. And you can't fit the culture to everything. You know, if you've got 10 people on a team, you can't put the team meeting at a time that's going to suit everyone, but you can at least consider when different people have different kind of like ideal working times, and then create a culture around that where it's okay for people to be unavailable for a few hours to get into deep work. It's little things like that allow people to get better results and not be like depleted of their energy constantly because of how they're being forced to work.
Yeah, I love that. One of my favorite leadership advice was the successful change definition is an equally annoying change.
Yes.
If everyone finds a change equally annoying, that means you haven't prioritized anyone, but you made something
Yeah.
which impacts everyone.
Yeah. And the difference there is that at least there's consideration of how is this working for different people rather than just this blanket one size fits all approach without stopping and considering. And often it's when works for the leader. And a lot of the time that's not when it works for the team. So yeah, I like that. I like that way of thinking about it.